All right, man. If you have followed us through haunt season or leading up to it, you knew one of the movies that we were super stoked to cover over the course of haunt season was, of course, Hellraiser. It was cool that Hulu had the rights to it so you could watch it at home if for whatever reason you're not going to the movie theaters. It was cool that we were going to get to see a rehash of an old classic horror icon. And it was very intriguing, especially because I had interviewed Doug Bradley like 2 years ago. And he had said, something going back and looking at it. He says, I believe the only way we will see Pinhead on movie form is if it is a actress playing that part, and
Hmm.
everybody in the room was like, "Oh my God, whoa, whoa, Doug Bradley!" And lo and behold, it was a year and a half later that we got like the announcement that hey, this looks like it's moving forward, and hey, production's coming up, and then came like the first like tests of her with the makeup on, and it's like, dude, like they're actually going for it, and now we finally get it, and the movie is amazing in my opinion, at least. And I'm super stoked to have one of the people who is an essential part of that, the production designer behind Hellraiser 2022, Kathrin Eder, is here with us. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So
Um,
this, I was going to say again, congratulations, because this really is a beautiful movie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, Taking on Hellraiser, any franchise from what one would consider the golden age of the horror icon, Pinhead is coming in on the back half of that. He certainly is a horror icon, Doug Bradley, but like, Michael Myers is well before Pinhead. So you obviously, as the cultural, shape of horror fandom is shifting around, Pinhead is representing, like he is, I think, a nice representative of the time period of from which Clive Barker finally got the movie made on into the theaters and everything, and to see your guys' take on that character, like it was very dope because horror is very wavy. Like we go through like these cycles, like, oh, zombies are like the cool thing. Like,
Mhm.
and so I don't know, like we're on this cusp, and I don't know if it's like the Halloween trilogy or even getting to see like Terrifier 2 make it to the theater or what it is, but it's like horror feels like it's on like this big bubble that's getting ready to burst and be like uber popular again. And she like is a great representation of like the one who can just kick that door in for like horror 2022. Like,
Mhm.
but what was it like for you to get this gig and take on this role, because Hellraiser is a hell of a role to take on, hell of a project.
Um, I think, I mean, David and I have worked together previously on the Night House, so we already had rapport, especially because we worked successfully together and
Mhm.
we had built a basis of trust, I think, that allowed him to say, let's keep going with Catherine. In regards to the design process of everything, um, I want to make sure we divide between the world building, which was the production design in many ways, and then the Cenobites and the box were other design aspects of it.
Right, like
And
character design, prop design, stuff like that.
exactly. And David went ahead with his previous collaborator, Keith Thompson, and
Mhm.
they really were behind reviving and re-envisioning how the Cenobites would look in 2022. Clive Barker was at the premiere, which was really wonderful, and he encouraged David, and he said that was the right move to break away from the BDSM look, which is something that we as the audience have gotten used to over
Sure.
the last 30 years, and take it to a new level. And I
Mhm.
think Pinhead is just such an iconic, beautiful creature. There's symmetry, there is power, there is a fantastical element about her, and Pinhead sticks with people, although they might not be familiar with the Hellraiser franchise. It's just a genius design. So going in the route of androgynous and having Pinhead played by a woman or transgender actor was a beautiful choice, I think, to bring it into present day culture.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it is, the representation of where we are at in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah.
With your design, working with how this whole movie is to look in 2022, you go back, I can only imagine, like you said, you're getting away from that BDSM, like Hellraiser, like very much in that time style, and you guys like you hold true to it in like a certain like to a certain extent, like kind of like in the house, especially when the house is like changing and the cages are coming down, stuff like that. But whenever the Cenobites are around, it kind of holds true to that roots. But you guys do turn it into, I mean, there's a lot of tonality of just a drama film when you guys are dealing with the stuff with, the roommates and all of her baggage. So like, where was it, those meetings like for you to meet with David and like you're like, here's my image board of where I want to take this thing here in 2022. Like what was that like for you? You want to pay respects, definitely, but you, like you said, you're taking it to a new level. So what was that like as far as what you specifically wanted to add to it going in?
When reading the script, there was immediately a certain inspirational images in my head, especially for the second and third act with the mention of void, which is also a bridge into the Cenobite world. Things like Art Deco and brutalism and masculinity and the opulent decaying, the decay of the opulent, that all came to mind. And that kind of started a larger conversation about how far we can take it, because Hellraiser allows us to have nuances. We can break away from the realistic world that we know. So we knew that we would start out in somewhere in the northeastern United States. And David felt it was appropriate to ground our first act in kind of a 90s punk vibe, which came in very handy when we arrived in Serbia and needed to film Belgrade for a northeastern American city. So it kind of like the larger themes for our protagonists, the roommates and Riley, centered around addiction and dysfunctional family relationships and seduction as well. And it felt appropriate on a grander scale to place them into an environment that's maybe a little run down and has that grungy feel. And it also felt appropriate to give that a sense of safety that we could then be ripped out of. And I think feeling safe in the beginning of a journey like this is crucial. So you then feel exposed and raw as you're being pulled into the world of the Cenobites. So yeah, with the apartment, the color palette and everything staying muted and somewhat organic, those conversations came about by getting to know our characters and their backstory and what matters to them. And David has much patience and always takes the time to really sit down and work through the script and talk about every scene and the emotional beats of the scene and how those would mirror in the visual world, and where we can establish clues of character or clues of story that are nonverbal that will deepen the layers of the world. So that's something where David is very open and that I'm very grateful for, because it allows me to gather information that I can pass on to my team and that we can work with. And so I think backstory is a big deal, especially when it comes to antagonists as well. Voight is such a complex character, and finding his vulnerability. I think having antagonists with a vulnerability allows you to build a world with a very wide range. And we really dove into that. Like, we looked at present day egomaniacs that we are all familiar with in, worldwide and in this country. And there's so much inspiration you can draw. And there is now with this movie, there was for me a platform to dive into these crazy emotions and fetishes, and a little bit dabble into the occult, and really research the visual history of all of those themes. And that was the basis of our conversations. And from there, location started playing a big role. So location defines to a certain degree where you can take the design, and in terms of color, that also comes through a color palette and how that arch works once you have those deeper conversations. Yeah.
The thing that's cool too is because we say that you guys are taking it to the next level, but you did keep the punk rock styling of, especially when she's freaking out in the streets and stuff. Like, it is very, that aesthetic of those films, when they were coming out. Hell on Earth, looks like the way that you guys set it up when she's like running through and she's tripping out, not really freaking out over the fact that her brother and everything else. Like, that reminds me of, like, this is what a Hellraiser movie looks like. Did Hulu, you guys, knowing that it's going to be made for Hulu, like, did it tie, because this doesn't feel like a horror movie that was told like, hey, you guys got to make it for television. Like, when the chains are coming out ripping people apart, they're ripping people apart. So was like the handcuffs pretty much off as far as any, like, obviously you got to work within like whatever the budget is, but like as far as them giving you like rating guideline stuff, like, did you guys pretty much get to make the movie you wanted to make?
I think we did. Every movie comes with challenges, and every film throughout pre-production gets rewritten in one way or the other. But I don't recall any restrictions in regards to certain style choices or thematic choices we made. They were pretty hands-off in regards to the creative, which was nice. Of course, we ran by the concept design and everything, and there might have been a tweak. Oh, can we go a shade lighter on the gray here? But it was so minimal. It was very, very pleasant to work with. And people actually run that joke that I find funny, because Hulu now is in the Disney family. And they say Hellraiser is the scariest movie in the Disney universe, which I kind of enjoy. So that was a very pleasant experience. And you're right, like, there are budgetary restrictions, there are timelines that need to be nailed. There's always something that you have to solve and that you're up against. But in regards to creative, it was also very important from the beginning, I think, to make it a cinematic experience. And I believe the pandemic is the only reason why we didn't get theatrical, because at that time, when the movie was finally greenlit, no one signed on to theatrical release anymore. And it originally had theatrical release.
Oh, wow.
So that's the sad thing about it. But then there was a lot of faith from the creatives and the producers of saying, well, movies like Prey had a successful run and opening through Hulu directly. And so this could follow suit. But I think there's a big group of people worldwide who would have loved to see it in the movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For sure. That, like, that case in point, the way that the horror community is reacting to getting to see Terrifier in the movie theater, and then it got extended, and it keeps getting extended because more people are going.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that your Hellraiser would have had a similar thing happen. That
Mhm.
whether the run was, um, a certain length from the get go and it was just a good turnout, or if it was like a limited thing and then so many people went that it got extended. Like I think it would have had it. Yeah, yeah. People definitely would have gone, man. Like for sure. Um, the process in which you get to kind of go through is very dope because you are really getting to build this world in which the screenplay is put on paper, and what David is trying to put into film. You're kind of behind getting to put it into reality as far as the cast is concerned. What was the what is your favorite area in which this movie takes place? Like, do you like
Mhm.
the mansion? You made a really cool point about the fact that their apartment is like the secret base, so to speak. Like, it's very, the point about you about how everything is compacted is really cool. It's like it's womb like they're all close together versus the hellscape is just this vast, like goes on forever feeling. That is a great point. But what was it? What was your favorite thing?
Oh, huh. I mean, there were a lot of things that I was able to work with for the first time because of the scale of the film, and also because we had a concept design phase up front.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really great being able to work with a concept artist and visualizing certain ideas before we even started hard prep.
Mm.
The mansion is something that posed a bigger problem than we thought. Um, Not a problem, it was just a puzzle to solve because there are no American mansions in Serbia due to many facts. And so we ended up stitching together that mansion
Wow.
and with locations and set builds. And for David, as in the Night House, geography is very important. And I don't want to quote him directly, but he says there's geographical horror, and that
Mm.
should be a genre, geo horror.
Yeah.
And so figuring out based on the script how that mansion works inside, like how do we get from the lobby, which we get to know in the party scene, the opening scene of the film, or after Serbia. How do we get from there to the showroom? Where in relation to that is the sex dungeon? Where is the office? How
Right.
do we work with the action sequences of the chase scenes that unfold essentially, where they realize that this mansion, or Void's idea of this mansion, was to build a trap for the Cenobites to get his boon. So all of those elements were a puzzle in itself that we needed to figure out, which I really enjoyed. And then in regards to favorite set, I mean, there were a few. I think that the most beautiful transformation that we were able to enjoy was that opening scene, that party, because that room was kind of a rundown location where they film music videos and one-day commercials somewhere in Belgrade. And the floors were wobbly and the walls had 40 layers of paint. And we knew like how, and it was in the middle of the city, so it was hard to access. And we knew that we needed to make this space the opening, the entrance to that world, to the mansion. So it weighed heavy in terms of importance.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able in 6 weeks to transform it to a space that I think turned out really nice. We put in the floors, we stripped the walls back down to the brick and replastered everything. We worked on the ceiling. There was a lot that we were able to do, and I'm actually trying to pull up the photo quickly if you want to see it. I have it here. I just hold it into the camera. Is that weird? Or should I show
No,
you quickly?
no, yeah, go for it.
I'll show you the before and after. So
Holy
above is the
smokes,
room, the
yeah,
before, and then below is the after.
that
And
is
that was a
wild.
and that was a really great experience. And I think it got people in the team motivated, and we shot it fairly early on.
Yeah.
And so people got like, okay, they got the idea, I think, that we were really trying to reach for a cinematic experience. And that was very important from the beginning. So maybe this one is my favorite set, but it's like, which kid do you love the most? Every set is a great opportunity and an
Sure.
empty canvas in that sense. Yeah.
I mean, that before and after that you just showed, that is pretty crazy to think about the amount of just detail that goes into something like that. Like that is something that um people, I think it takes like looking at it multiple times to be able to grasp the gravity that goes into making something like that. You know what I mean? Like when you watch it for the first time, you're so caught up in what's going on
Mm-hmm.
that you're not, and it's a compliment. It's like I have this talk with composers all the time because
Mm-hmm.
it's always like the music is like the compliment to where if you're so caught up in the acting, you may not even realize there's been music the whole time until there's like a rise in tension. And it's the same kind of thing. Like if you're so caught up in the acting, you may not realize like, holy smoke, look at this that they built and they put together until like the second or third time that you see the movie. And then you start like noticing the other things that are centered around the actual performance. And that's a great example of that right there. Is like you guys transformed it 180% type of thing.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. Like I love when we get to go that far. And the limitations often when you get to a location, I don't want to call Belgrade a satellite location because there are a lot of productions there, but you are used to certain luxuries or to certain tools when you work in the United States. For an example, when we got there, access to high-end furniture is very limited, or to
Mm,
specific lights. So in this particular space, we also custom designed a lot of the practicals. All the furniture was built. So we really took it to that place of saying, okay, if we can't find it anywhere, we'll build it, and we built it all, and that was exciting.
that's really rad. What would you say the percentage of the mansion set you guys actually built yourself?
I mean, there's no room that we didn't alter entirely. So I mean, on stage we build and we rebuilt a lot of things. So we would go to a location, film certain parts of a scene there, and then go back to stage and rebuild part of that
Mm,
location that's connected to the showroom to film the other point of view of the scene. So the landscape would line up, the outside geography, and all those things. So I
wow.
would think, I mean, on stage we had a big build. We built the showroom with adjacent rooms. We built a lot of little detailed sets. We built all the those hidden corridors that Void is in.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, there's so many builds that we had. So in regards to percentage and page count, probably 50-50, but
Nice.
then every location was completely altered. So
The
yeah.
the movie really does have this tonality of if this becomes a franchise of any kind that the the new version of Pinhead could very much carry a new Hellraiser franchise for a series of films. A podcast that listens to our podcast knew that I was going to get to talk to you, and they wanted me to ask for them because when this movie came out, and probably even before, but really when it came out, there has been this theory online that your guys's Pinhead is actually Ashley Lawrence, the original, his original antithesis from the
Hmm.
originals. And she has since like transitioned into excuse me 1 second, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry about that, Catherine. I got a package dropped off.
All good.
I was just gonna say so anyway, they were wanting me to ask if Ashley Lawrence's character has transitioned into Cenobite form and is now the new Pinhead. It's a cool theory, but I said my vote was no. This is their own take.
I've never heard that theory before, but I love the thought process, and also behind it. I mean, I think it might not be because Pinhead coexisted at
Yes.
that time of Ashley's real life. So not sure. I mean, that would be an interesting question to pose to Mr. Barker himself. And I know he's very secretive on everything, Cenobite for the future. So that's a cool theory. I like it.
What was your interaction with, did you get to, you said that he came to set, or that he was at the premiere or something. Did you get to, meet him, have an interaction with him at all?
No, I didn't meet Mr. Barker. He wasn't able to join us in Belgrade. However, I was in touch with his estate because we hid some of his paintings in one of our sets. So there, I think it's an Easter egg kind of idea. I have to rewatch the movie. I know they're leaning in certain places. So he sent us his paintings that people hadn't seen before, and we framed them and placed them in the set, which was a nice homage to him. And I was very surprised. I listened to a lot of his talks being in pre-production, but then hearing him speak in person at the premiere made me like I was in awe of him. I almost have a little Clive Barker crush now because he's so elaborate and he's so wonderful and such a warm person. And there is this nobility about him and how he passed the torch to David. That was a really beautiful moment. And I think it moved everyone who was in the room. So I have a lot of respect for him. And who knows if there is another Hellraiser in the future that we might get to collaborate on again. Maybe I'll get to shake his hand at some point.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's for sure the amount of Clive Barker's contributions to horror cannot be or overstated, but his like you said, his personality, where John Carpenter seems like he can be very ignatic, like he can be very like over the top type of an interview if he wanted to be, or he can be a very chill personality. Wes Craven, very like kind of reserved personality. Most horror people seem like they are. Like the more depraved, like the more violent, it seems like the more when you sit down and you get to like talk about creative processes or what this was like or whatever, they always are like the most like, I just want to thank the fans and it was really great, and my cast. It's always like the the cartoons and like the ones that are like voice actors that I'm like, oh, you really are like Animaniac, like you really are like this and that. It's like the serial killers and the people that make the movies that we get our serial killer fix from are always very much just like, what's going on, man?
Yeah, very, very grounded. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that has to do with horror. I'm personally not necessarily a huge horror buff because I get traumatized too easily and I get sweaty hands and I just can't stand it emotionally to watch a horror movie. I'm working on it. But what I've learned through David is that horror films are a beautiful tool to deal with subject matters and thoughts and fears that might be politically incorrect, or that humanity keeps very, very hidden and stuffed away somewhere because it's uncomfortable to speak about. And I think horror films are a vehicle to really tap into those sensations and emotions and thoughts and explore them on a fantastical level. And I've found great appreciation for this way of storytelling, and the visualization of those themes. So I think it's not as shallow as some people might receive it as, who are not in the community. And I think there's a lot to be searched for, and you can learn a lot about yourself dealing with horror movies. And I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and that's a really dope rad thought to sign us off on. But before we do, Kathrin, tell everybody, like, where can people kind of keep track of you and what you got brewing next, and the next thing and the next thing after that, because I'm sure, as awesome as this movie was, there will be multiple, hopefully there's multiple times you get to come back and we get to talk to you some more. But where can everybody keep track?
Well, Hellraiser is out now. In January, the second season of a TV series is coming out that I worked on, called BMF, Black Mafia Family. It's a biographical TV series about two brothers who broke away from Detroit poverty and became the largest crack dealing organization of the United States throughout the 90s. That's coming out, and I'm attached to a script that just got pushed. I was excited to start that. Psychological thriller, more of an art house film with brilliant actors. So I'm waiting for the start date on that, probably next year.
That's awesome.
And so far the sky's the limit. I'm reading a lot of books right now and taking care of myself and enjoying some time off. Oh, and I'm going to be at the Savannah Film Festival next week. I'm a panelist there.
Very
HOD
cool.
Superwomen. So that's going to be exciting. I've never been on a panel before. So I'm going to get to enjoy Savannah and watch some movies and hopefully hang out with cool filmmakers.
Well, that is very cool, man. If you are there in Savannah, hopefully you catch Catherine's panel. Hopefully one day, man, we get to do one in person at our
Yes,
con here in
hopefully.
California. And until then, we hope to get you back on the podcast sometime. But congratulations again
Thank you.
on Hellraiser. It really is a rad movie, man. And I am, fingers crossed there is more of your guys' Hellraiser world to come down the line. But thank you again, Kathrin.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so much. Nice to speak, Jimmy. Bye.